Hello, everybody. Let's see if I'm up on the. Let me just play some music first.
Yeah, I'ma do shit my way, so you can go kick rocks. I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave. 6 feet deep under, but my body won't decay, cause my messages are timeless, so they'll put them on display. Oh yeah, I rap with a certainty, I have a sense of urgency, a message for eternity, for everyone internally. I had some people burning me, but now they fucking learn to see I ain't the one to fuck with. Now they looking nervously, and I don't really care what you think of me respectfully. You can kick rocks if you think you're fucking better. See, I will outwork you, turn you to an enemy, hurt you so bad that you're gonna need some therapy. I got the motherfucking recipe, I've been cooking up hits, I'ma leave a legacy. You'll be looking small when you're standing right next to me. I'm 5'10", bitch, but I'm 10 feet. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way, so you can go kick rocks. I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way, so you can go kick rocks. I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yeah, I'ma do it my way. Yeah, I'ma do it my way.
Hello, everybody. Let's see if I can make sure I'm on here. Can you guys hear?
I heard you. Did you disconnect it? I think she disconnected herself, everybody. And now she's completely removed herself. This may be my live now that she's back. I was going to say, did I take over your world already?
Well, you know what? Kane does that all the time. Be careful of Kane, because he comes into I've had him up here a few times, and the next thing you know, all kinds of weirdness happens. So you never know.
I was going to say, if you want me to do a live, we could have just done it over on my channel, and I would have just gone live.
Okay, well, I figured it out. I'm a professional over here, right? No,
Well,
seriously, I just want to welcome A.R. Hayes, A Convict's Thoughts, to a post-woke world, to my channel. I am excited to have him here. Many of you are fully aware of who he is, but if you're not, you should definitely check his channel out. I started following A.R. Hayes really in the beginning when he first started talking. And one of the things I really enjoyed, admired, respected about his perspectives is the way that he brings us into his world and explains things from the perspective he had from being a convict in prison and the system. And these are all really valuable insights that I wouldn't have gotten, and so I think it's really needed for people to come out and speak on those experiences, because I think people are dehumanized when they're in prison and jail, and when they come out, they remain dehumanized. And so we need people to humanize, because we're all just trying to walk home together, right? We're all not perfect. So yeah. Hi, AR.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I kind of feel bad now, because you said you've been listening to me since the start. And I just don't feel like I've shut up since. So it seems like people are having to listen and listen and listen.
No, well, people are interested in what you have to say, because it's I think you're a really smart guy. You're really good with words. And the stories you're telling need to be heard. So that's my perspective on it. I mean, you just need to keep talking about it.
Well, I definitely appreciate it. Thank you very much for the kind words. And we definitely have an amazing community. I see some excellent followers of both yours and mine in the chat. I'm definitely thankful that they've been able to join us tonight. I'm sure we're going to have an interesting and fun, uncensored conversation that may blow some people's ears off, but it's okay.
Absolutely. You know me. I don't want to have to use words that, like newspeak or that kind of stuff. I'm not limiting my vocabulary. as long as I don't have to. Anyway.
I support you fully in that. I'm a big fan, and that's one of the reasons why is it's you, and I like that. I like real, and I like you. So
I appreciate it. So, all right. So I told you before we came on that I have a few questions. These are not a gotcha question. It's just like I did an interview the other day of a man named Cryptex who has followed the Delphi case. And I just, it's questions that when I'm watching, I'm like, oh, I wish I could ask him this, and so now I get to ask you. So I'm excited.
put me on the spot. Let's do it.
Yeah, no, I mean you could turn the tables on me, and I'll say whatever I can, I'll answer whatever I can. So Ann Taylor, okay, one of the things I heard on your channel recently, and I was actually happy to hear about it because way back in the beginning of this case when Ann Taylor got assigned, and everyone's kind of talking smack about his attorneys or the term what's the term people use about public defense attorneys? They're like really working for the state. It's like a pretender, public pretender.
Yeah, public pretenders. Yep.
Right. And so I, for whatever reason, I felt some kind of way when people were saying this, not you, but just in general, they were shitting all over these attorneys. So I went and I did some research into Mazoth. I found out about her and what an amazing person, what an amazing attorney she is and the work that she's done. And then when I saw her speak for the first time in his trial, I was like, oh, she's savage. Like this woman is excellent. And Ann Taylor, I felt the same way about, a lot of respect. And Jay Logston too. I like his out of the box approach. We need that. So one of the things you had said was you did some research into Ann Taylor and you found that she seems to have a history of sort of helping point out corruption.
She does, and that's the thing. I really like you. I like Massoth a lot. She's a private attorney that got brought into this case to stand with Ann Taylor, and I believe she has such a powerful way of expressing, the documents and the wording to the judge, where Ann Taylor is very much known for being the bulldog and going on the attack and finding the little bit of discrepancies, the lies being told. And I think we're seeing that on full showcase right now, right here, the Idaho 4. So many people are battling what evidence is valid, what's not valid, what's circumstantial, what's not. And Ann Taylor's putting it right in front of all of us. She feels as though from the very beginning, we've been lied to, and she's tired of it, and she's going to point every one of those lies out. And I give her credit for that because that's a lot of hard work, and it's a huge risk. Not so much for Bryan Kohberger. Yeah, it's a big risk for her. It's a big risk for her in her career because she's on the attack, and it just takes one light switch to go off, as you know, and your attack could really edge you up owing some money and being out of a job. So.
Right. Well, we saw that in Delphi. If you followed some of it, there was a probable cause affidavit with, one of the detectives ended up getting killed, murdered. And another detective who was about to testify was arrested before he was able to testify. So even detectives, police, law enforcement that are trying to sort of do this whistleblowing or calling people out instead of what everybody else does, sweep it under the rug. I mean, those were serious consequences for those people. So I 100% agree. They're very brave. And I think that needs to be I think it should be recognized,
Think about it with exactly like you said, even when law enforcement tries to put their foot down and put out some word, go back to Chris Dorner out of California, when this man literally took it upon himself to create war against law enforcement and the people in place that were calling him a liar for trying to point out the issues within the police department. He literally got gunned down and burned down in that little cabin in California mountains. And this isn't new. I mean, this happens. I've seen it even in my small towns where I've resided, where, cops were trying to get other cops, held accountable for their actions. So.
That's really scary. That name you said, that guy's, what was his name that you just mentioned, that story?
Chris Dorner. He was one of the biggest stories going on. major manhunt. He was shooting officers and the district attorney's
Oh,
kid.
yes. I
Yeah,
remember this story. I did not
yeah.
know the other half of it though. So now I'm gonna have to go down. I'm gonna have to read
I'm
about
telling you,
that.
go back into that. It's such an interesting deal, especially when you get into what people call his crazy manifesto and the things that he was speaking upon. This was a man that was decorated in the military. He was a very by the book individual, and then when he started to relay that there were issues within the force there in Los Angeles, they took it out on him personally, went after him, and he made the choice to flip the script, and he started taking it out on them. And these are the type of battles we really have to worry about, is when is law enforcement going to take it out on law enforcement? Then we have no more protection, and this is kind of where we're headed. So
Wow, that's right. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of these cases right now. And the corruption, which has always been there, it's just being viewed by more eyes and talked about, because of things like YouTube and things. Okay, so here's another question I had for you. Okay, so you talked a little bit about your experience, because you were in both of the places that Bryan is in. Like you were in Latah County Jail, and then you were also in Ada County Jail. Is that correct?
very shortly in Ada, I was being transferred when I landed in Ada, so I didn't actually ever hit population or get into the main portion of that jail. But I saw the intake and I saw the transfer ward, and that was back in the earlier 2000s when I was kind of
Hmm.
moving between the penitentiaries there in Idaho and Washington states.
Okay. So I heard you talk a little bit about how Latah County was actually, I mean, for being a jail and being incarcerated, in having your freedoms taken away, it wasn't quite so bad. In other words, you were able to have like a space for yourself, and you weren't like subjected to a lot of the things going on around you, and the meals were 3 square a day, I guess. And the Ada County is different. Is that right?
Yeah, Latah County, I want to call it a country club. Um,
Hmm.
it was really quiet, really laid back. And I was actually held in the exact segregation unit downstairs where Bryan Kohberger's cell was. There's 4 cells down there with a day room and a TV with a shower. So literally at most you can have 4 people in that block. I mean, the jail doesn't even hold but a handful of people as it is. So it's better food, better quality clothing, better mattresses. So if I could have spent all of my jail time there, I would have been quite happy. But
Hmm.
and the guards are a little less on edge there because they don't have the hassles, they don't have the fights, they don't have the contraband, they don't have the issues.
Hmm.
Um, much more mellow, much more mellow. Now, Ada County's, it's still not quite like the big jails that I've been in, because I've been in Maricopa County in Arizona, and I've been in, a couple of jails in New York and in Chicago, and much larger scale jails that also had penitentiaries tied to them as well. So Ada County only houses about 1,100, 1,200 inmates, where I've been in cell blocks that hold that amount of people.
Oh my God. I
Uh,
can't even
so
imagine what that, yeah. Wow.
yeah, I think one of my biggest experiences, and I don't mean to get away from Ada County, but
Mhm.
I was in a dorm room in Arizona of all max cellies, and it's literally a dorm room of bunks that are stacked 3 high, and we had about 900 people in this warehouse that I mean, it was fight or flight. I mean, you were either going to get helicoptered out of the jail, or you were going to put up your fists and handle your business for your commissary, for your pencil, whatever it might be. So to think about an open space like that, you get no, hidden time. You don't get away from anybody. Where in Ada County, you still have the ability to have some personal space and get away. Even though they do have dorm rooms, Bryan Kohberger wouldn't be in any of those, and neither was I. So, um,
Wow.
he
And
still has some peace.
well, you just talking about that honestly made me feel anxious, because like personality, I'm more of an introvert, and like really just, you probably know this, but I'll just say it for the chat or anybody. People who are introverts tend to be re-energized when they're by themselves, and more drained when they're out and, you know, like say at a party or whatever. It doesn't mean I don't like to go to parties, I don't like to talk. It's just like at some point it's enough. I have to, you know, be by myself. And extroverts get more energy, you know, from the crowd. So to not be able to have that alone time where I'm just like decompressed from everyone else would be really stressful on me.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at too. Like if I'm in a crowd of 3 or more people, I'm freaking out. I'm stressed. I'm a very quiet person. A lot of people think, oh, he lives in Vegas. He's got to be out there creating an uproar. And I try to stay in as much as I possibly can. The only time I will venture out and go anywhere is with Jen. And people think, like, how childish is that? This man can't even go out by himself. I don't trust myself to go out by myself. I would
It's
rather just
trauma
hang out with
too,
her.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of
Yeah.
that's a trauma response from like having lived in situations like you were just describing that honestly, I think people don't realize just how bad, and I don't fully realize. I have relatives and I have friends that are currently incarcerated, that kind of stuff. So like I understand from what they're telling me, right? But I clearly have never been in that situation. And to hear you describe some of the situations you've been in, like takes my breath away. And yet there's millions of people experiencing that right now. And it's just such a dehumanizing thing to do to people, regardless if they're criminals, you know, it does. I understand they committed certain acts, right? Some of them are actually innocent in their like these too. So it's really disturbing to me.
Well, and I think that's what's so frustrating. Even when we look at Bryan Kohberger's, we come back a little bit to him and the difference between Latah County and him gravitating now over to Ada County. In Latah County, he still had some sense of he was innocent. The fact within the jail, he could still get his special meals. He probably gets his laundry done more often. When you get over into Ada County, there's no more special meals to fit his diet. So he's either going to go without eating or he's going to pick and choose a little bit of things that he's able to eat. And, I do want to say there are very few items, even through the commissary, that are going to suit his type of diet or the need to stay healthy. Because when you're in a situation like that, one of the very things to help you through each and every single day is a routine. It's a workout. It's a cleaning of the cell. It's doing your laundry. It's keeping the mind moving while actually keeping yourself in the physical state that you want to be. And you and I both know from things that we've learned through this time. He wasn't a basketball player or a huge athlete, but the man did what he could to stay in better shape.
Right.
And maybe that's from, something from his younger years where he was overweight. Now he chose to run. And when you get into Ada County, that's all gone. That's all gone for him. When Bryan Kohberger goes to rec, which would probably be 3 to 4 times a week for 1 hour, maybe, it's in a 10 by 10 block with a hole in the roof that you can see the sun or the rain or the snow, but it's a brick wall that just surrounds you, and it's 10 by 10. So you figure 10 feet by 10 feet, 100 square feet. And that's where you get your rec time to get your energy out and get your exercise. And it doesn't really work. You're by yourself.
Right. Well, so what you're describing right now is reminding me of Richard Allen in Delphi. And one of the things I said on one of my streams the other day when I began is this is starting to look like Delphi to me. But thankfully, Bryan is not being held in the same conditions. But in a lot of ways, it sounds like he could be. I mean, a 10 by 10 cell is his rec time. So what is his, like, is he in a much smaller cell the rest of the time? Like, what do you know?
They're very limited, very small, because he's in the segregation unit where they try to house each inmate individually. That's where I was housed. But now you have to figure when I was housed there years ago, the population within that jail was even less than 1,000, and now it's up and over that for a jail that was literally initially built for a couple of hundred people.
Oh my God.
So
Oh
in
my
his
God.
situation, it's not even guaranteed he has his own cell. I would think he does,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not guaranteed that he does. So
Mm-hmm.
you could have three people stacked in a 6x8 cell where the bunks go straight up on one wall. On the other wall, you have a little desk with a seating area and a toilet. You can barely walk in between them. And this is what it was like for me in Maricopa County. You know, I was housed in a cell very similar to Ada County, except I had 3 high. I was housed with 2 murderers that were in there. One of them was in there for killing a cellmate in jail, and
Oh
he happened
fuck.
to sleep right above me. So
You
it
didn't
was
get
like,
any sleep for years or
yeah,
months
no,
or whatever. I mean, shit. How
I
can you
really
sleep?
didn't. You know,
Oh
this is,
fuck.
and the funny thing too is Arizona was very racially divided, and here I am thrown into a cell, them knowing my racially
Oh
divided thoughts
shit.
at that time, and I was in with an Hispanic and a black guy in the same cell, which you're not allowed to do. So it was on
How did
edge
you
the entire
survive
time.
that shit? I mean, genuinely, like that's crazy. Oh my God. It's not
It was
funny.
fist.
It's just outrageous. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was fist fighting every day. It was bad. I mean, it was really really
Yeah.
bad. I took a lot of lumps, let me tell you, because I by far was the smallest guy in the cell on top of
Right,
it.
right,
So
right.
you know, it was like this is not going well. I better get my workout in. So I do feel as though Bryan. We've seen the change not only in his appearance. What worries me at the last hearing was the change in the demeanor, the
Yeah.
change in the very look in his eyes, the facial expressions. He looked very quiet, very cold, very distant. And to
He looked
me, that's
defeated. He looked a
worrisome.
little defeated. He looked a little defeated. And before when I saw him when he was in Latah County, he looked like I I in my mind, I'm imagining him being very interested in like what he's learning. Not that he wants to be there or anything like that, but because he's so intellectual, right? I imagine him really being like interested in all these things. And but now like it's not there. He looked gone and just it was very sad actually. And yeah, it made me sad for sure.
Well,
So
and in that sense, I think, you know, like you and I were discussing, the gut punch that I felt when we were watching that hearing, and I kind of described that in the feeling of just being slammed in the gut. And I think one thing that really gets to me is when I'm looking at him and I'm projecting back, and I remember, you know, and this is another big difference between Latah County and Ada County. In Latah County, the interaction is with calmer, quieter, easier going guards and people that aren't tearing up your cell and trying to find contraband. They're not telling you, hey, by the way, you do remember you're here for the death penalty, right? You're actually, yeah, you're being reminded every single day in that atmosphere in Ada County exactly why you're there. They have no problem telling you how big of a piece you are and
mhm.
just putting you down and that your family's going to miss you and they're never going to see you again. Where
That
in
and
late,
that to me is torture. Honestly, like that should be classified as torture because you're now isolating someone from all their family support, their friend, any kind of support, and then you're just ramming into their head all of these horrible things. That to me that's torture. It's abuse. It's abuse, and it's not. I know it happens, but I find it's uncomfortable to think about, but it makes me really upset, honestly. I think
yeah,
more people
and
should understand that this is what happens, and that even if you're a criminal, right? Like you deserve whatever you deserve jail time. But this isn't rehabilitation. This isn't paying your penance. This is literally treating human beings like they're garbage. I mean that's what they're doing, and I
yeah.
for one don't think it's okay.
And I want people to remember something and really make note of this because this actually was one of my, and I'll explain the story a little bit after I let people know. The sheriff runs the jail. So
Okay.
people need to fully understand the sheriff runs the jail. When he walks into that jail, and I know people think that there's this administration and there's this policy and this and that. It goes back to the very day of like when I was in Maricopa County and Sheriff Joe Arpaio ran that whole jail and even built Tent City and anything to defame and lower an inmate down to a nothing, like pink underwear, pink socks for the men. So just imagine, here I am, I'm in heavy extraditable charges being held in Maricopa, and I have to go to one of the harshest jails in California, just outside of Los Angeles, and I have to show up wearing pink underwear, pink socks, a pink t-shirt, and they even painted on the back of it prime for disposal. That was the way
makes
that
me
they
sick.
treated me. So,
That
when
makes me
people
so sick.
wonder, with Ann Taylor and Bryan fighting the system in the manner they are, and this is something you and I talked about too, it's a risk. Ann Taylor attacking the integrity of the law enforcement agencies, this sheriff is going to know about that, even though it's not his county and it's not his same jurisdiction. He knows the sheriff over there in charge of Latah County. He's also going to know the various people in law enforcement, both within the different departments and the FBI. And that's going to come back onto Bryan Kohberger. Any pictures that are sent to him will be thrown on the floor and stomped on with the guard's boots. Any food that he get just might not come normal. It may be a little bit wet from spit, or it might have been thrown on the floor and then put back onto the plate. You just don't know. But these are the things that happen within the jail facility. And who's going to stop it? Who's going to change it? Because there is no way to change it. You can't step in there and say, hey, I know what you're doing. You better stop now or else I'm going to, oh, wait, there's nothing I can do about it. Who am I going to tell?
And then also, it seems like nobody really cares, right? Because it's easy for people to say, well, they're just criminals. Who cares what happens to them? But when you realize that it could be you or your family member and you're innocent and you're in this situation, at least hopefully that starts to make people care a little bit. I think we should care, period, because these are fellow human beings, and to treat them like they're garbage, whether they're guilty or not, I think is it. Like you might have heard, I mean, I don't agree with the death penalty. I'll just say it. I don't agree with it. I don't think we should give the state the power to execute anybody, period. I think that's a very dangerous position for any country to take. And we're one of the last countries that even have a death penalty. But I'm against it. And I understand there are things that people feel, but I'm just of the belief that debts are paid one way or another, this life or the next, whatever it is, you will get yours, good or bad. And I don't feel like we should be the ones, making that determination. And that's the other thing that scares me here for him.
Yeah, and I agree. And I just want to comment real quick. Catherine S., I absolutely agree. She made the statement that jail's not supposed to be fun and the pink undies isn't the end of the world. And you're right. After I got over the initial shock of it, I realized I got to put my head down and I just got to do my time. I can't let my time do me. I have to learn to do my time my way, and that was quietly with my head down and get out of that jail and get to the penitentiary and move forward with my sentence, because in most cases I earned my very way there. So and then to Jacob, why does BK look so calm in this case, considering it's a death penalty case? Well, I mean, everybody's got a different way of handling the pressure and the different ways of these cases. In some cases, I don't think he looks calm at all. If you really look the man's in the eyes and into the facial features, and I know he holds himself well, but he looks scared at times to me, and that's not looking so calm to me. I could see the nervousness within him, and I could see the fear. But you also have to understand, just like someone when I was going through the system through jail, they put me on some various medications, almost tranquilizing me because I kept getting in fights and I was disruptive. I hit a lawyer in the courtroom. I really had,
Oh
yeah,
shit!
I had some
Do we have
issues
any
going
video
on.
footage of that? Do we have footage of that, AR?
Yeah,
Did that
let me
make
tell you
today's
that
nightly news?
them slamming me to the ground was no joke. Let me tell you, they don't look well of that. Even if you swing and just barely connect, and Jen was actually in the courtroom in one of my instances where I completely got screwed over by my own lawyer, and I came unglued in the courtroom, and she just was so afraid of I wasn't gonna get out. I wasn't gonna come home anytime soon, and
Yeah.
I mean, it added a couple more years to my sentence for my
Shit.
misbehavior. So I
That,
know
well,
that.
you know what though? That'll make you control your temper real quick. It'll make you learn how to control it real quick, right? When you have to spend 2 more years in the place after that.
Yeah, well, when you make a wife that absolutely loves you and adores you and is willing to stand by you no matter what, wait extra,
Yeah.
time because of your inability to understand what's more important than your
Hmm.
actions. Yeah, and I think that Bryan Kohberger is being well led by Ann Taylor, and I actually really look at Massoth. I really think that she's doing a great job. She's really standing with him and working with him, and I feel like they're guiding him very well. I give him a lot of credit for that. Really do.
Yeah. No, I commented recently about how I really appreciate their calm demeanor. They're asking these very pointed questions. They found a lot of needles in the haystack, given all this stuff that's been thrown at them. They're doing it's incredible how much they're doing, and it's awesome. And I love when she's asking these questions to the witness, and the witness answers in these ways that make me want to kick them in their face. Okay. And she just maintains the same cool, calm, collected demeanor. She will not be shook from it. She's not going to get snarky or sarcastic or huffy. And that to me makes her and the whole team that much more effective. And you know what I'm saying?
I do, and I was pretty critical when we just watched the hearing on the 23rd, day one, when I had kind of a group with me. We were live, and I was pretty upset. I felt like Ed Taylor kind of got caught off guard. She stumbled around a little bit, but when I
Yes.
went back and visually watched it again, and then I really just put it all into perspective. This is on the fly. This isn't something where these attorneys and Bryan Kohberger and everybody in that courtroom have time like I do to perspect it all out,
Right.
think
Right.
about it, and try to figure out what I
Yeah.
would say and how I would say it. Um, she really did well. Ann Taylor stopped herself because I felt like there was going to be some murky comments that came out of her mouth that was
Hmm.
going to be like,
Hmm.
look, Judge, shut up for a minute while
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
to you.
Hmm.
Instead, she took a minute, and it seemed like at the time while I was watching it, she was stumbling and having issues. But then as I've gone back and I've really just kind of paid more attention, she did a really good job of collecting herself, coming back to what she was trying to say, because that judge really did do all he could to throw her off.
Oh, he for
And
sure
she,
did. He was
yeah.
absolutely. I agree. I agree with that 100% because and I personally, in terms of this judge versus John Judge, right? This to me, this judge is more intellectual and he knows case law more, where it seemed like John Judge was kind of like on the beach, like having a beer, like showing up to court. Like that's how I felt when I watched John Judge. But this judge is more I feel like he's fair, but like he's still on the state side, like they always are. And so I don't know. I was wondering what you thought about him in terms of his impartiality. He definitely has made it known a few times that the DNA is there. So what are you going to do? And that bothers me. So what do you think about this judge?
It's intimidating, and I think we all kind of saw that not only by the defense but also the prosecution when they first stepped into this courtroom before Judge Hippler. I would much rather have Hippler than I would John Judge.
Mhm.
John Judge, he was a joke to me. I would be very afraid as a suspect, in a case like this facing the death penalty, to have him as my trial judge. I
I
just think
agree.
that,
Mhm.
I would be very, very nervous and very afraid because that man couldn't make a decision to save his life. And I would
Mhm.
rather have Hitler, who will dissect both sides, because I
Mhm.
guarantee you, and somebody pointed this out, they were absolutely right. Hitler knew the answers to the questions he was asking before he even
Mhm.
asked them. He just
Mhm.
wanted to focus in on what they were going to say
Mhm.
and then teach them along the way. That's why he's a judge. Like, he's
Mhm.
been through the lawyer stage, he's been
Mhm.
through all of this. Now
Mhm.
he's in a stage to where he can actually implement the law into a case, and he
Mhm.
knows that, and he's teaching along the way. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's going to help, and that's why I think we're going to see this Franks hearing. I mean,
I do
that's
too. Yeah, I agree. And I agree with everything you said about Hitler. I think that, the place where he gave it back a little to the prosecution, and I really appreciated it. He nailed her on some things, and the thing that gave away that they may need to do the Franks is when he asked Ashley Jennings, you're arguing these three cell towers, but was that in discovery before just now? And she stumbles a little.
right.
No, it wasn't. I was afraid you were going to say that, because that means you
Right.
have to get a Frank's hearing now. Now you're going to have a Frank's hearing, you know, and that made me a little
Well,
happy.
that's the thing. Like, Judge Hitler is the type of judge, when you go before him as a defendant, you're going to be nervous every time you do it. Like, you're going to be on shaky
Yeah, because
ground. Like, oh my
you
god,
don't know where he's going
you
to
know,
come from, and
right?
but I'll be honest, like I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Um, the way he's doing it. Like, I can relate to it, I guess, is my point. Because I think when he comes in and he just gets straight to the point with the question, it does kind of throw them off, right? It threw Ann off and the prosecution. But at the same time, it's like, it's so real though. Like, it's so real. It's like you just busted them right now. Boom. And the thing about it is, it is a tough argument to make for Ann for this Fourth Amendment violation of Bryan's alleged, like, genetic witnesses is what they're called. These people that are in this database, right? When the judge says, but did Bryan, and this comes to another question I have for you, did Bryan's DNA get uploaded? And Anne just kind of stepped back and said, we don't have that file, right? And,
Right.
but that was the question that needed to be asked. And that's really what that whole Fourth Amendment is coming down to. And so, um, m- I I know what I think about if Bryan had his DNA in there. Do you have an opinion on that?
I have a gut feeling that he probably did, but I mean, it's we're now getting into a territory that's so new, and I think that's what's so scary about this is the IGG and everything about this is, people are seeing it as the hero way to solve these crimes, like the Golden State Killer and all these, big crimes are being solved. But now we're literally right in the midst of a case where it's being used right here, right now, to get an arrest immediately within a very short time frame. This isn't like a case that went into the cold case files. We've been searching for 30 years. This is a backdoor usage by the FBI showing that they're willing to break their own policies and procedures to go out and get somebody as quick as they possibly can. And that's scary. That's really scary to think about because I, being a person, I mean, I was adopted. So, of course, I would upload my information into these various companies because I want to find my 6 siblings in my biological family. But the problem, for me, I'm lucky. I already got so much DNA in the databases of the FBI in the states anyway. It doesn't affect
They
me at
get your
all anyway.
STR, yeah, your CODIS would already
Yeah,
be there. They get you on the
like
CODIS right away, right?
dude,
So,
they got so much for me. I mean, they've got every tattoo on file. They got everything for me.
mhm,
So none of that would affect me at all. I'd
right,
be like, oh, look at that. We got this multi-felon in here wanting to find his brother. Is he a felon too? I mean, I
right.
mean, there
Yeah,
we
I
go.
mean,
But
That's the
You
thing though,
know
but
what?
and that's the whole point about the panopticon, right? It's like people were no longer consenting, and there are so many people ignorant of the fact that they are using these genetic databases for active investigations, and they were never designed to do that to begin with. The cold case thing, sure, I get it. I think it's not, I think it's, these people that have missing loved ones, if this can help you identify someone, put them to rest, to me that makes sense. But the problem is they did that, nobody really complained, everybody thought it was great, and now they just jump into active investigations and use this tool that was never designed for forensic use, right?
It hasn't been to this point, but where are we going to go moving forward?
I don't, I
I
personally feel
you know,
that, and I think you feel the same. I think a lot of people would if they knew. I don't think it's okay for the government to do that. I think they should need a warrant. First of all, they should have to have a warrant, and secondly, people's choice should be respected. In other words, they have to make a decision before they even submit it. I agree to let Ellie use this, for investigations, or I don't, or research, or whatever it is. And that's just, we're not even close to that now. So now you can just make a person up out of whole cloth, like Bryan Kohberger, and arrest him.
and I was having a discussion with somebody the other day, and it got kind of heated. I mean, I hate to say it, because he said, well, you know what? Convicts are getting smarter and smarter every single day. They're getting better and better at their craft and committing these crimes. So now we've got to allow law enforcement to catch up to be able to get back to where they can catch these people. And I
Yeah.
looked at him, I said, what about the private citizens that are not committing crimes? What about the
Mhm.
people that are living by the letter of the law, and they attend church every single week, and they send their kids to good schools, and they're living by the best way to live life. They're not
Mhm.
committing any sort of crime, they're not deceitful, they're not lying. So what happens when their DNA gets ransacked through, or their phones get a warrant signed off by a judge with no reasoning to even
For
look
eight
at that
years.
cell phone?
For
Right.
8 years with Bro I mean, how many, that's a big, you wanna talk about them looking, they're desperate now, like, "We gotta find something." We're going back 8 years now, right? I agree with you 100%. And I've said it before, I opted out of any, like, sharing my stuff, right? So if I got contacted by a police officer and told me I'm a genetic witness here and to some whatever, here's my answer, buddy, I'm gonna get a lawyer, and you just violated my Fourth Amendment right, because I opted out, right? And that's the thing, like, it, some of that fight comes from the genetic witnesses being willing to come forward and say, I didn't consent to them looking at my family tree, because it's their rights in that sense that was violated, not Brian's. But I contend it's all of our rights being violated when they do that shit.
Yeah, and I do agree with you, but I mean, at the end of the day, who's going to regulate who in this situation?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
now we're at a point, and this judge made it very clear. And this is, again, exactly what I said. Here comes that gut punch when a judge says, well, he has no rights when he's the perpetrator leaving his DNA at the crime scene. And I'm thinking, you haven't proven that yet. He
The
is not
alleged,
guilty of
right?
that yet.
Yeah. The
Right.
alleged
So now
perpetrator.
all of a sudden I'm listening to a judge in one of the most critical hearings of this case, one that even got me totally focused and watching it. And
Hmm.
I don't want to watch court, hearings and cases, because I've been there, I've done all that, but I got to. And then it's like to hear a judge say, well, your client, the perpetrator that left his DNA at the crime scene. And if I was Brian, I would have said, you need my freaking touch DNA on a movable object that I didn't put there? I mean, I would
Hmm.
have been a complete jerk and got thrown out of the courtroom in cuffs.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
to think about, and just the little comments he was putting in there, he even insinuated, okay, well, maybe Bryan Kohberger had others with him that helped him
Yes.
commit this crime. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, are we going this route now? I mean, really?
Hmm.
So now we're into a good argument of how Bryan Kohberger's, information is being wrongly used, and you're just going to say, well, there could be other people, maybe not, maybe I mean,
Which is very irresponsible, honestly. I feel like that, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it's irresponsible for him to say that in a case where they've said that like they don't have any other suspects, right?
well, I mean, now all of a sudden we get a lot of talk within that courtroom, and I got to give credit to other people out there that have talked about, the idea of other suspects within this case, because I've even done videos, and I'll stand behind what I've said, that I feel as though it's going to be extremely hard for the defense to get an alternative suspect discussion into this trial, because I think the
Really?
prosecution is going to do everything they can to block that. I mean, we're coming into the area now where both sides can really fight for what's going to be allowed to be talked about in the courtroom. And if you look over at Delphi, look at how that
Yep.
judge blocked every opportunity of a different scenario happening within that crime.
And
And
they
I've
have
been
4
really worried.
confessions. 4
Right,
people confessed in Delphi, and she still wouldn't let third party culprit defense go through, right? That's what we're
right.
talking about, right? Third party culprit, which it seems like it's pretty obvious there's third party culprit when she talks about bloody handprints or what blood on the hand railing and the blood
Well,
on the glove outside, right?
I think it even gets more evident when the judge himself says alternative suspects with Bryan Kohberger. That's making me believe now this judge is going to say, okay, we're going to set Mr. Kohberger over here. He's going to
Hmm.
be in this little box. We're going to put him in this
Hmm.
jail cell because he's number one. Now
Hmm.
we're going to work our way through this process, prosecuting him as number one, but we're going to
Hmm.
allow the door to be open that there's possible other people that are going to come into this show and get
Hmm.
prosecuted as well. So this judge scares me because he's not willing to say, instead of saying Bryan Kohberger suspect number one, he should say, this is a defendant that's been accused. So he's
Yep.
not guilty as of yet. He's been accused
Hmm.
of something where
Hmm.
others could possibly join that accusation. Then I would feel a little bit better about it. I don't want to get hit in the gut and think you're just going to leave the door open that other people could be. But that is all circumstantial, but it's also all evidence that it could be somebody else, which is reasonable doubt. So
Well,
now, why are we
wait,
still doing this if it's full of reasonable doubt? Why are we still doing it? Why are we still
right.
moving forward?
Well, you know what? To your point about the third party culprit defense, Anne could use that as an argument. Say, you yourself, judge, said there could be other suspects. So I feel like we should be able to put that defense on, right? I mean, the judge said it himself. There could be other suspects, right?
Yeah, and you know what?
And I
And
mean, that
that's the
would be
whole thing.
helpful. That would be helpful in that those other people were the culprits, not with Bryan, but excluding Bryan. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I
And
hope they allow it.
I think one of my biggest fears, and I'm just giving a hypothetical here. It's just an opinion. This is not based upon fact. It's not based upon anything.
Hmm.
If this prosecution wanted to do something like I've seen many times in the past happen to people where they're accusing Bryan Kohberger of being a part of this crime, when
Hmm.
legitimately all he may have done is talk trash on the internet, or maybe
Hmm.
he drove a car that dropped somebody off 3 hours before something happened, and they're
Hmm.
trying to hold him to the point of, you either tell us what you know, or we're going to prosecute you to the full
Oh.
extent of the law, because this does happen.
Mhm.
I hate to say it, it happens a lot. They try to break
Mhm.
you, and if you don't give up what you know, they're going to
Mhm.
charge you to the fullest extent. And even if you do give up what you know, they're going to still hit you with a lower charge. So you're
Mhm.
screwed either way. Uh,
Mhm.
so is this something in my mind where I feel as though, the one of the reasons why it doesn't make enough sense is because Bryan Kohberger literally dropped somebody off, drove off, whatever might have
Mhm.
happened. That's how we got the car on camera.
Mhm.
There's so many scenarios that play through my mind, and I just never come back to one that makes sense to me, that Bryan Kohberger, an outsider not only to the area but to the victims themselves, could just passively walk into this home and do one of the most tragic, horrific crimes you can imagine, and then just go back on with life like everything's normal and have his dad sit with him in the car.
Mhm.
And it's just like, this isn't normal. This is not
No,
normal.
it doesn't make any sense, right? It doesn't. And also with no prior violent acts, right? Like there's nothing, it's not like, I remember back in the beginning, all the talking heads saying like, this is someone who's, clearly done this before and, all this kind of stuff they're spouting. And yet he has none of that. Again, they struck out, no history of violence, no stalk. Like he doesn't, none of this shit is adding up and they're looking really foolish, but yet they can still persist because they're the power of the state. It's really, I agree. It's frightening.
But at the end of the day, I think Ann Taylor summed it up perfectly. They did zero investigating. They relied on the FBI to go out and utilize this IGG to get them a tip. They jumped immediately when they got that. They jumped. They made the arrest. They didn't utilize that to actually go investigate or learn things. That's why when Bryan Kohberger was arrested, Bill Thompson stood up at the podium and made the declaration that he still needed tips. He still needed help. He still
That's
needed
right.
people to give him information because they couldn't even piece it together. Once they had Bryan in custody, they still couldn't piece it together. So that tells me, okay, you've got DNA. You got this touch DNA on this knife sheath with no explanation. You're scratching your head just as much as we are, and here we are, we're wasting millions of dollars of taxpayers' money, letting a young man that was in a PhD program sit in a jail cell, taking all the heat without an actual explanation. Because when you have a violent history as a kid growing later into life, and then all of a sudden a crime like this happens, they bring all of that out. You would know all of it.
They for sure. They would have leaked it in the beginning before they would have had all that out there. That's how you know there's nothing, because there's nothing. Nothing's coming out. Okay, he had visual snow, right? He was struggling. A lot of people have that. It's not tied to some violent act, right? And so,
well, I would like somebody to prove to me visual snow leads to quadruple homicide suspects. Somebody tie that together for me, because I don't.
I don't either. And I would think that if that were the case, we would have heard about it before this. This is not something that that they can tie it. Regardless, I think a lot of people actually in his generation and younger have some of this kind of going on because of the simulation theories and stuff they see. And it unfortunately, it causes some issues like that. I don't know. Maybe he has some like autism or something. I'm not diagnosing him. I'm just saying like people think differently, but that doesn't make him a violent criminal. Okay. So wait, let me just see. Cause I had a couple other questions in here that I want to make sure that I get a chance to ask you.
We got a great chat tonight too. By the
know.
way.
I feel bad. I should say hello over here for a second. Let's take a look here. Let me put up Christy, Nevada. I think K-bar was used, but not the only thing used, and maybe on one person only. Hi, Christy. Thanks for being here. This person says, Christy, I agree with your comment. What's this one? We all know that this massacre was not done by one single person. So what if BK is guilty? There's still another one out here with us on earth getting away with a crime like this. I mean, I really don't see anything that's convincing me that he has anything to do with it.
And that's what's scary. And like I said, I chat with a lot of people that are around crime because we're all trying to change our lives, and I'm trying to be there for them too. Some are still struggling in that life, and so we kind of rely on each other to hold each other accountable to go straight. And that's the thing that's even in their minds when we discuss something like this. We think about it when we used to do things together, that would get us caught up in these, not this level of things, but I mean, obviously I was a part of a big ring of financial stuff, and yes, there was violence involved. And man, if you only catch one of them, and I'm not saying Bryan Kohberger's the one of them. I mean, it's even worse right now because in my feeling and in these other people's feelings that I discuss this with quite a bit that have backgrounds themselves, and they all shake their head and say, this is not the guy. This guy might have been the one on the internet playing games at the keyboard, talking about things, or, this isn't the guy. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. Like
Mhm.
Brian isn't the guy. If I had to walk up to him in the jail, I would feel intimidated that he was going to get me from behind. This
Mhm.
isn't the
Mhm.
one. Um,
Mhm.
so now
And
you
that's
have to wonder,
instinct. That's your
right?
instinct talking, which to me is valuable. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, and that's the thing too. You have to get to know what's around you and be able to
Mhm.
weigh out the various factors of, is this a risk or is this not a risk? Because people
Mhm.
would look at me and they would say, well, he's all of 5'8". Back at the time when I was getting locked up, I was 175 pounds. I was pretty built.
Mhm.
I was athletic. I was in
Mhm.
pretty good shape. And people would say, well, I don't really see him. He looks like he's got that good boy look to him. And then they would read my paperwork and they would see my tendency to have anger issues, and I would have
Mhm.
violence within my charges, and they would say, okay, well, maybe this guy will go off the deep end a little bit. But
Yeah,
I
but somebody who's
showcase that.
like you, but if somebody was like you, in other words, another person like you, right, who has like had this history, right? They probably I would imagine they recognize you as a threat. Like
Yeah,
I'm just saying, right?
we knew it right off the bat. Anytime that you walk into, let's just even use Ada County Jail general
Mhm.
population, which, I mean, that's not the hardest of time, but it's not a great time either. When you
Mhm.
walk in, you sum up not only your surroundings, but the people within that surroundings,
Yes.
and you pick out immediately. It's the number one thing you do when you walk into these settings. You pick out your biggest threats, and then
Mhm.
you work your way down that list of threats to the
Mhm.
point, that's who I'm okay. I don't need to watch them. I don't need to pay attention to them. But these are the ones I have to monitor at all times. And
Right.
you sense it, you feel
Yeah,
it,
no,
you know it,
yeah,
you
and that's
know.
instinct, right? It's literally like survival instinct, and you're living it day in and day out in this jungle like setting where it's dog eat dog. And so you're going to develop some very keen instincts on people. And so what you're saying is you and other people like, that you've maybe in a criminal sense that like you've done things. When you look at Bryan Kohberger, that instinct isn't coming up saying this guy's dangerous, in other words.
No, and that's the thing. Like when we look at individuals, we've learned to look directly for who's going to be a womanizer, who's going to be someone that's violent towards women, who could potentially be someone
Yeah.
that could hurt children, who's
Mhm.
potentially just an off the rocker mental case that could take anybody
Right.
and everybody out. Um,
Right.
because like I was locked up with Mark Godot, one of the biggest serial rapists and murderers in all of Arizona history. Dale
Mhm.
Hausner was a couple cells down, another gentleman that just shot people for the fun of it.
Fuck.
These are mentally unstable people that the minute that you interact, you say, major threat, major,
Right, right.
major threat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they would even say it to me. They would say, based off the way that I was very to myself. I knew how to grab my tray of food, set it down on my table,
Mhm.
sit by
Mhm.
myself. I didn't need anybody around me. I didn't need protection. I had no
Mhm.
problem walking to the phone in the middle of a group of people and creating distance from my
Mhm.
privacy so that
Mhm.
they knew to get away from me while I was on the phone. These are things that give people the idea like this isn't the guy you just go
Right.
with,
Yeah. Like I'm having a
And
bad day. I'm not gonna fuck with this one. I'll just
yeah,
get
I mean
somebody
this
lower on
just
the
isn't,
total pole.
it's just it's literally who are you going to test, who are you not going to
Yeah.
test, because the people that you're willing to test are the people that you're going to implement um, to kind of follow you. They're going to do little
Yeah.
things for you while you're
Mhm.
locked up. They're going to pass your stuff to the next cell when you need your stuff passed. They're going to be the ones that steal a pillow when you want a pillow. They're going to be the ones you utilize to do things you just don't want to do.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
when you look at Bryan Kohberger, he doesn't come across as somebody to us, and I'm not saying he's weak or anything of that nature.
No, I know
He's
what you're
not
saying.
he would be no threat to me that if we had to go get into a boxing match that I would feel like he would put me on the floor and I wouldn't get back up. Like
Right.
that's just not the case. I'm also not afraid of him being one in his cell making a shiv that's going to come get me from behind later, and maybe I won't get back up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's literally the one I would look at and say, I don't need to pay him much attention. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
just don't.
Yeah, and
And there's,
I think that's a valuable insight though. Honestly, like I don't to me that's very valuable coming from someone who's been in prison because I just know from my own relatives and stuff like there is an instinct that you develop for people that you can read people. It's almost like that like it takes you a split second to size them up. And that's not something you can teach someone. They have to live through that to develop. Some people are better naturally, but you know what I mean like it's
well,
something
and
that you
that's the thing.
gain. Yeah.
The first time I got locked up, I didn't have that nature within me. Like, I just
Mhm.
went in as a train wreck that was willing to bounce off the walls and do whatever it took or handle what. And then I started coming to the realization it's like, oh boy, I better learn my surrounding and the people
Right.
around me. Otherwise, I'm going to continuously get injured in these fights. And I'm going to
Mhm.
put my own life at risk because of the way that I conduct my own self, not knowing
Mhm.
what's around me. So I
Mhm.
just learned, like, there's passive aggressive, there's aggressive, there's people
Mhm.
that are just the biggest sweethearts that just want to please everybody and make everybody happy. There's
Mhm.
all these different personalities, and then all of a sudden you get into these situations where you're locked in a cage with
Mhm.
all of them, with
Mhm.
all of them. So you got a mixture of people. And I used to tell people it's like you go to your local mall, you
Mhm.
gather up 1,000 people, and you put them
Mhm.
in a warehouse and lock the doors and say, "Okay, guys, have fun."
Oh
And
fuck.
And it's like, I don't know any of these
Yeah.
people. You know what I mean? Who's who in here? Who's going to be the serial shooter that's a madman that just has a death wish? And then, you got,
Yeah, because you're always going to have one of those off the wall fuckers in there that you just nobody wants to go to sleep around. And so like that's the outlier, and then you have the
that's right.
typical sort of like alpha dogs, and the betas and that. And so yeah, you better learn real fast who's who, or you're not going to
Yep.
do well, right? And so yeah,
Yep.
like I think it's an important insight to hear somebody, like you say, like he doesn't strike you that way. And he didn't strike me that way when I first looked at him. I think I made a community post about it. Remember way back when we heard about this, and then remember when you saw his face, like what were your first thoughts? And my first thoughts were, that's strange. That's interesting. Like that's kind of all I thought of. And then later, obviously I look into it and it's like there's something not right.
I do. When I look at Kohberger, I see a sense of a kid that probably struggled through high school to have the connections with the so-called cool kids. He probably didn't date the head cheerleaders, and
Mhm.
and, and neither did I. But I still had a foundation of friends that fit my personality, and I know he did as well.
Mhm.
And I've heard other people like Willie and other people that step up to the plate that knew him back then and can speak highly of.
Mhm.
He conducted himself maybe in an odd way, but a good way. And so what? He was hard on grading papers. I mean, I can only imagine my
Yeah.
reaction to having to grade people's sloppy papers, and I'd be like,
It's
"You
the
jackass," you know.
You know what though?
Uh,
And that's like it when I was in college, like the TAs they called him. That's what he was. He was a TA, right? So
yeah,
and you have everybody knew the TAs that were tougher on the grading than others, but that doesn't make anybody more likely to commit murder. You know what I'm saying? Like that has nothing to do with killing somebody. The fact that you're a
I
tough
see.
grader.
I see Bryan Kohberger more as a teacher. Like,
Mhm.
he was educating himself because he truly liked education. He liked to
Yeah.
be smart. He liked the intelligence factor. And I
Mhm.
believe that he was grooming himself, whether it be to go into law enforcement, to teach others what he
Mhm.
knew to better their skills.
Mhm.
I just have that gut feeling. Yeah, maybe he's harsh. Maybe he's demanding. But some of the best teachers and the people that guide us to educating ourselves the best way are exactly that. Uh,
Absolutely. Absolutely. No,
so
I agree. I agree.
I see nothing wrong with him being strict in grading papers or distant from the students when he's a teacher's aide. You have to make that distance.
Oh
So
yeah,
I, you
yeah,
know,
I agree with you. Well, here's something that I had done a video on a long time ago, and I I wanted to kind of look and see myself, like evaluate his reaction when he got pulled over, right? Because people who are punks, I'll call them, right? Like, and I was kind of a punk when I was younger. Like, I mean, like, I just don't like cops, like just I don't like them, right? And so you want to see his attitude when he gets pulled over, not only by a cop, but a female police officer, right? And we all got to see that interaction. And one of the things that I got from that interaction was that he is the type of person who wants to be right. Okay. I was married to someone like that. Okay. And it's like, and there's nothing wrong with it, but there are some people who are going to keep pushing until you recognize their position is the correct position. And that's kind of what I got from that interaction. Not in, and I don't mean in any way disrespectful. I don't mean he was cocky or arrogant in any way. It was just like a compulsion almost for him in my mind. That's what I was saying, where he's just like, okay, but this, but yeah, but okay, but this, in the most respectful way. And that's what I got from him. And I think some people can take issue with that. Like if they feel like, oh, you think you're so much better, or oh, blah, blah, blah. That's the only inkling I got from that. But everything about it was respectful. He was giving deference and respect to the police officer. The manner in which he was questioning her was not in any way disrespectful. It almost just made me laugh a little bit because I'm like, I know what you're doing. Like, that's what I'm thinking to myself. I don't know. But I think that was helpful, because if he was a real antisocial punk ass, like, that's not how that interaction would have gone at all.
Well, I'll tell you, and I'm not, well, I am antisocial now, but I've always been kind of, capable with the women. And I wouldn't have a beautiful wife like I do if I'm a completely shut off person with incapable
Right.
social skills. But,
Yeah.
The way he spoke with that officer when people were trying to point out how, oh, that's narcissistic, that's great. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys should have seen exactly how I talked to the last cop I talked to when I got pulled over. Like, if you want to see something bad, you would be
Right.
pinning me on like every
Yeah.
serial murder across the world if you saw the
Mhm.
way I spoke last time,
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
um, okay, so he had questions for the officer, and I'm on the same page as you. He had a discussion. He was
Mhm.
trying to explain to her exactly why he was not in the wrong,
Mhm.
or what gave reasoning of why, if he was in the wrong, this is still his understanding
Yep.
why he
Mhm.
wasn't.
Yeah.
And I don't see anything wrong with that. I know 75% of the people I know, I think, have that same type of I do it with my wife every day. When she
Mhm.
tells me something, I prove to her why I'm right. And then she
Mhm.
just shakes her head and says, that's the most narcissistic thing you've ever done. And I'm like,
Mhm.
well, it's day after day. Get used to it, babe. This is
But
life.
I don't, but
But
Seth, the thing about it is, I don't think it's, I don't, well, first of all, I think men, if we're going to be generalizing here, okay, for all the ladies in the chat, men can do that, okay? But I'm going to tell you that we have our own ways of doing things, right? That men are like, oh God. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, though, I don't think that's narcissistic. I think it's just a personality trait that some people have. Like, they just want to be right, and they want you to know that you're wrong. And like, that's not something it's not the type of person I am, but I appreciate that other people are like that, including yourself. And I don't think that makes you a bad person or a narcissist, right? And that's kind of what I saw with Bryan. Is he's kind of like, lady, like, I didn't do anything wrong, but he didn't say it like that. He said it in a much more respectful way, and kept kind of trying to point it out. So
I
I don't
mean,
know.
I think everything we've seen since day one, since this young man, Bryan Kohberger, was presented to us as a quadruple homicide suspect, he has been nothing other than respectful, calm, collected. There's no outburst out of him for any reason. And you have to understand, if you're facing a death penalty case, your life is on the line with every word that's said within that courtroom. Your
Hmm.
whole life is dangled before you. And
Hmm.
this young man has not come unglued in any way whatsoever. And I challenge anybody to go back through all of these different court hearings of these big legendary homicide people and the outbursts that these guys have.
Oh,
And
even
I'll
the
say
facial
guys, I know,
expressions, right? But even the
right.
facial expressions, like, you're not seeing
Yep.
that on his face. He's not like, or, it's very, you know, and I guess that's why people will say, oh, he looks too calm to be whatever. It's not calmness. He's mentally, he's very composed, you know,
Right.
and then
So
at his age, right? Like, how do you know?
so now you also have to put this into context too. So you're taking this young man who at the time I believe he was 28 when he was arrested. He's now into his 30s, but never presented himself out of whack, never come unglued, never shown any outrageous form of emotion within this courtroom when people are attacking his very livelihood and possibly his future life. Like his
Mhm.
life is on the line. No emotional outbursts whatsoever. Yet this is someone that you say can go into a home and take 4 lives with one knife, and
Mhm.
literally we've come to no conclusion as of a reasoning, much less a connection, but a
Mhm.
reasoning. Like
Mhm.
I need a reasoning. Don't even tell
Yeah.
me you have a connection.
Mhm.
There's something to this, because if he's not sick and sadistic, and we've seen this grown since very early of his life to develop into something like this, then
Mhm.
there better be a significant reason why this happened. And I think if that was the case, you wouldn't have to worry about connection. You wouldn't have to worry about
We
all
would
this other
know,
stuff.
right? And
Yeah.
we would have known, and we know that people have scoured for this stuff, and like they scoured themselves with their warrants, looking at 8 years of iCloud information and stuff. I mean, it just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So this was another question I had, because so I was kind of theorizing about, you know, the federal investigation piece, right? And I heard you talk a little bit about it, and so I wanted to like kind of ask you some questions about, because you know, it's hard to figure out this federal grand jury versus the state grand jury, and is there two, is there one, is one still open? And you know, I was going through different things, I listened to different lawyers talk, and I came up with an idea, and it's not just my idea, other people might have thought of this or whatever, but I was wondering if the murder, if you think it's possible that this murder of these college students happened during the course of a task force that was already in that area, watching maybe that house or people involved in that house, and even to the point where like it would explain why there's undercover and unmarked vehicles in that neighborhood that night. Like, is it possible that they're already surveilling this, and that in the course of whatever their surveillance is, this murder occurs, and that is why it took so long to come forward and talk about it, the delay in terms of the time that I mean, what do you think of that theory?
Um, like
Or if you think it's dumb, you can just say it's dumb. Like, I'm just
no,
curious.
no, I just want to make sure that I get it into the right context. So you're stating the FBI, the investigation was already transpiring within Moscow around the University of Idaho, and there may even have been people's eyes on that home as well as various homes.
Mhm.
Could even be the frats. It could be because, I mean, I think we've all heard that there was a large presence in the area of investigations happening.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
you know, the worst part of all of this, and because I've had my intertwinings with the you know the federal side of things, and also I've been both involved in my very own crimes, and I've been involved in crimes with others. So
Mhm.
I've had kind of both sides of it, where the investigations were quite stringent and tough. But
Mhm.
you know, I believe that they were looking into something. I don't know what it is, but I don't think it literally comes back to that home.
Mhm.
That's my opinion. Like I don't think the King Road home with the 6 people within that home were a part of that investigation. I don't
Mhm.
know, and I don't think we'll ever, and this is the worst part of it all, we'll never even know what the investigation probably was for, because
Mhm.
that's the way the federal agencies do it. They sweep it under the rug. It's private. You're never going to get any information. You'll never know anything.
Mhm.
Hence why you get these big, like what Ann Taylor talks about. Well, we have this big, black, dark time frame here where we know nothing. Well, that's the
Right.
way the
Right.
feds work. That's
Right.
what they do.
Mhm.
their court systems are completely different. Their grand jury systems are completely different. The rules and regulations are so different. I do feel like something was happening in the area. I don't know
Mhm.
what it would be. And I don't want to speculate and just come out with random things that I think it could be. Was it probably something substantial? I would think so. Being around a college campus, to have
Mhm.
authorities like that within the area
Mhm.
conducting an investigation is probably something substantial. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
I
I
mean, it could,
think
like I theorize, like I'm not saying it was drugs, but we know, like you said, there were other task force that shortly after all this happened that came out with these big busts of, like, Aryan Nation or the white, whatever it is in Idaho, whatever they're called. And then, the drug task force, many of them came out, really big ones involving even Corporal Dean, who ended up being going to the sheriff's office and then guarding Bryan in Latah County. And like he was part of a big bust in like Potlatch, I think, or somewhere around there. But I guess like that's my point is you've got this heavy presence and they're surveilling whatever it could be, the frats, like you said, or whatever criminal activity might be happening. And then right under their noses, this happens, right? Like it's just it just like that was kind of like that's kind of like my ideas, and that you answered my question. I appreciate it. It's kind of we'll
I
never
think
really know.
if I think I could give my 2 cents without like and that's one thing I'm very careful of. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not saying this is who, this is why. I think
Mhm.
if there was a rather large investigation transpiring within that area, I think that the feds were looking into law enforcement. I think that they were
Okay.
looking at the procedures that were probably happening
Mhm.
because we've had issues. We see the Drake case that's happening with the
Mhm.
I'm not even sure what he was. I know Lana covers it really well. And
Yeah,
then,
I'm
you know,
familiar, like, somewhat, and then the sticker gate thing, right? We know
the
that they were
sticker gate's
yeah.
happening. But and Ann Taylor's going to attack this and she's going to attack it hard because this
Good.
isn't, this is small backwoods. I say small backwoods Idaho, but if you really put it into perspective, with these big busts that transpired up in that area, that wouldn't even have been national news. Like, because of my
Yeah.
past, I had no involvement with the area Knights. That's not a part of an affiliation that I have a lot of knowledge of. I know where they
Mhm.
came from. I know where they stemmed from, but that's
Mhm.
not who I was actually interacting with or a part of. So I
Mhm.
can't speak upon their
Right,
rules, their
right.
regulations, and how they handle things.
Yeah, and
But
I would nor would I wanna speak on anybody's
yeah,
regulations with that, like, I know nothing about that. I'm just using it as an
right.
example, like, but
No,
anyway, sorry.
and what I can't project is because of my past, I do kind of know the intertwinings of the investigations into affiliations, into
Mhm.
the narcotics, into the various things of these natures, and they're deep
Mhm.
and they're hardcore investigations. They take an extreme amount of force and a lot of work
And
and a
time,
lot of
right? A lot of
yeah,
time, right?
yeah. So these
And
things
so
don't just unfold quick. They take a lot of time.
so that was kind of, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'll forget if I don't say it. That was kind of my thought as to like why, like I was just trying to theorize like why some of the secrecy, right? And I think a lot of it does just stem from like them going in the back door with this and the way they did their investigation. But I was also contemplating like if there was this embedded like undercover operation going on, and then this murder occurs, and whatever it might be, they're not going to want to reveal that and get forget about all this work they've been putting in, if there's undercovers or whatever around. They're not going to want to like reveal any of that to people because that just wasted all their time, undercover. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you have to realize too. I mean, a lot of the sealed stipulations that we saw in these documents make it very clear. One, a lot of things are sealed to protect law enforcement, and not
Hmm.
only to protect law enforcement, but they're also protecting the techniques utilized in investigations. Now, I think we're all coming to the conclusion that Moscow Police Department and most likely the Idaho State Police did not anything within this investigation. This falls
Mhm.
strictly into the federal side of things, and they're
Mhm.
going to protect every realm of that investigation because they're going to utilize those techniques elsewhere. And that was one of my points. If this Bryan Kohberger case did not explode the way it did within that area, the big bust that happened would be very small news.
I
Like
see. You're true. Yeah, I
people
understand.
within the area would know about it because, a lot of people are not coming out and talking about when the Aryan camp just outside of Moscow was shut down years prior
Mhm.
to this, and they forced everybody off the land, and a lot of stuff goes into the workings well before this crime happened, and they're
Mhm.
not going to give up their techniques because they
Mhm.
have to keep those
Yeah,
quite,
that makes sense.
not even just because of this case, but they're
Mhm.
utilizing those same techniques in Illinois or Texas or somewhere else to investigate
And it could put
other
other
realms
those
of crime.
people's lives at risk, right? Like all those people
Correct.
know. So like, and that makes sense. And I understand and respect that piece of it. It's the, it's the other piece where, like you said, it's the FBI that did all of this work and they're just hiding behind like, no bueno, we're not, we don't know nothing. Like we're not telling you anything. And the state is like, we're not getting the information, and it's like, you can really see that in this case and how frustrating and corrupt that really is when it's run that way. And from what you're saying, it sounds like this happens a lot more than we realize it.
It happens every day. Yeah, but I mean, for them to be in the area the way they were, if they're not going to come out and just tell us why they were in the area, that showcases it's something deeper. It involves probably a law enforcement agency, something within the university. I mean, they could have been there monitoring the purchase of the new college for all we know.
Hmm.
We don't
Yeah.
know. We
Yeah.
don't know why they were there.
Yeah.
But I know that the FBI is not in an area conducting a large investigation unless there's a real federal reason to be there. They're not there to just investigate state crimes. They don't have the time. They do not
Right.
have the time. The feds do not want to go solve state cases. They have their own stuff on the
They
plate.
have,
They
yeah,
got
they
big.
got a lot going on, right? Well,
Uh,
that aligns with what Andrea Burkhart, who's really like my favorite attorney. I follow some others, but she's one of my favorite, and it aligns with what exactly what she said, which was, this is not a federal. This was not. The feds didn't get involved because he crossed state lines. She's like, it's just. I know that she goes. I know it's a thing, and it says that's one of the things. She's like, but that's definitely not the thing here. Like that's not it, right? And so that sort of reinforced,
and I kind of misspoke when I first came out and said, "Hey, I knew the feds were involved in this." And I
Mhm.
started to say, well, it's because it's a cross state line crime and this and that. But, where I kind of misspoke is where the feds would have been involved in something with Bryan Kohberger, it wouldn't be because he drove from Washington State into Idaho to commit this crime, because he was
Mhm.
in Idaho, committed the crime. Okay,
Right.
that makes sense.
Mhm. Mhm.
But what was he doing criminal wise before he went into Idaho and committed the crime? And then what was he continuing to do after the fact when he
Right.
left Idaho?
Yeah. Yeah.
The hiding of evidence, the taking of a murder weapon. What if there was another victim in the car and he drove
Mhm.
another victim to another state? I mean, there's a
Mhm.
lot that goes into that. And that's why I felt as though the federal agencies would have to be involved in at least the investigation of it, because they don't know the full realm of what this crime is,
Mhm.
until they can dig in and find that. And unfortunately, it just kind of thinking about how this all played out, I don't think they found exactly what the hell happened in this entirety
Mhm.
of a case, because and I'll just bluntly say, I think they're on to the wrong person. I really
Mhm.
think that they're on to the wrong person. I can't
Mhm.
say that Bryan Kohberger didn't drive his car from, Pullman to Moscow and then back to the mountains and then over to the lake and then to
Mhm.
Albertsons. I can't tell you all of that because I don't know. But
Mhm.
I don't think that he intentionally drove from his apartment at 2:48 in the morning to Idaho, drove around, found the courage to go in to commit a crime like this, leave, go hang out at his apartment for a couple weeks, get a haircut, see the doctor, drive home with dad. And then at the end of the day, he gets arrested, and nobody can come up to the front of the plate and say, this is why he did it. This was
Yeah,
his reason.
yeah,
You
it
know,
doesn't make any sense. And then the other thing that was annoying to me was the whole Bearcat. You know, they've got a Bearcat, they've got snipers surrounding the house, and it's just like the whole show of it. You know, it just it seems like a power trip. It's a power trip.
I know how that goes, because not only did my parents' house get destroyed 2 times through big things like that, but my wife got slammed to the ground, put in cuffs because of my behavior before, and an arrest as well. So I've been around the block with that, and I get the overuse of power. And they're going to say, "Oh, he had kitchen gloves on, so we thought he was potentially sorting this or doing that with them." That's all BS. They
It
did it
has
to
to
try to
be. It
catch him
has
off
to
guard.
be. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's bullshit. It's such bullshit. And that to me, I'm I'm for limited like government rights. Like I feel like that's the whole reason America's here, right? We left England so we could practice religion and speak, and we can carry arms so we can protect against a tyrannical government. I mean, that's the whole point, right? And so I really find that offensive that they overutilize this stuff. I understand they have to maintain officer safety. I get it. But at the end of the day, like you can't just knock on the door, when you've got snipers
come on.
surrounding,
I
you
mean,
know?
you're talking about officer safety. When he went out for a jog and there's
Mhm.
30 of the officers, they could have just tackled him while he was on his run. They
Yeah.
wouldn't have had to destroy Brian's parents' house. They
And
did not.
traumatize them, right?
There was no point in the raid the way they did it late at night with his family and everything of that nature, when they could have waited till morning. He probably would have put on his jogging shoes, gone for a run. They
Mhm.
could have tackled them, saved the whole show. But the reason why they like to do it the way they did is because they catch you off guard. They put you into a situation where you feel as though your family's at risk as well. So when
Mhm.
people come to me and say, Bryan Kohberger asked who else was arrested, he was asking who else in his family was in cuffs and being brought down to the jail. Don't
Mhm.
tell me he was asking about his partners in crime. He was
Mhm.
worried because a raid just happened on his parents' home where they
And
were
he
held at
doesn't know what the fuck
gunpoint.
is right. He doesn't know
Right.
what the fuck is going on right now. Like he's not
You know,
thinking, "Oh, this is because I'm guilty." And no, he's thinking like, "What is happening right now?" And they traumatize the whole family. It's like another Richard Allen type scenario where it's leverage. It's the art of war, right? Like they're going to put you in the most like vulnerable position you can possibly be in. And if you don't confess, then then you're probably it's because you're innocent. Like a lot of these people are going to be shitting themselves just saying whatever they think they want you to say so
well,
that you can feel safer.
that's exactly why they do it, is because they want you to run your mouth.
Hmm.
That is the number one technique. I'll give everybody the heads up, and I've been through this so many times. I've been in and out of interrogation rooms. Even to this day, I get brought into interrogation rooms when they're
Hmm.
trying to investigate something. And my wife will tell you, it's like I'm just on the heat seeker for interrogation rooms. I don't know what it is, but they they want you in that room because that's make or break. You're either going to tell on yourself, or you're going to
Hmm.
give them some sort of information they can utilize in their investigation, because they are highly professional at what they do. They know what they're doing.
Hmm.
They know how they're doing it. And I don't care how good of a criminal you are. Like even myself, if
Hmm.
I step into that interrogation and I open my mouth and speak, I'm screwed. They're going to
Right.
get
So
something out of
so
me.
just
They're-
always stay quiet and ask for an
Yeah,
attorney, right? Like always.
I
It's never worth
yeah,
your
I just
while.
my wife will tell you now, because I always have a hat on, and now I'm always wearing a hat that says a convict's thoughts. So I
Hmm.
literally, I think it was a month ago, I had to go into an interrogation room, and it was over something stupid. But
Hmm.
I had this hat on, say the convict's thoughts, talking to the officers in an interrogation room, and I pull my hat over my face now. You're not going
Right,
to
right.
see my facial expressions, and I'm not going to
Hmm.
talk to you. I've
Hmm.
learned my entire lesson. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter what I say. I I can look right at you and I can say, you got the wrong person. I didn't do this. And they're going to look
Mhm.
right back at me and say, well, you know who did.
Mhm.
Because if
Mhm.
you are willing to sit here and say you didn't do it and look us right in the eye and you're just being tough and you opened
Mhm.
your mouth and you started talking, you know who did it. It's like, all right, dude, I'm not talking to you
Yeah,
anymore.
exactly. It's
No more.
anything you say other than just like exhaling or belching, like you're incriminating yourself. So it's just like zip, like nope, attorney, because you get people think they can talk themselves out of it, I guess, or they're scared and they just want to be a good citizen, And no,
Well,
no,
and
no,
I
no,
think
no, no.
that
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened to Bryan Kohberger. These
Hmm.
idiots come jumping through the windows, breaking down his family's doors right
Hmm.
around the holidays. He just enjoyed Christmas. We're coming into the New Year's. I mean, I hate to say this, but he had to have some sort of sense they were around. Like,
Yeah.
when the FBI's surveilling you, you know
Hmm.
it. There is no way they're around your house and you put on your shoes to go for a jog that you don't feel that presence. Like, I
Right.
always knew when they were there. I
Yep.
just didn't care that they were there.
Right. Right.
And maybe that's the mindset he had too. Like, I just don't care that you're here because I haven't done
Yeah.
anything and I'm not doing
Yeah. Like,
anything. So I don't
right.
care, you know.
Right. Right.
Because if he did care, he would have bolted. He would have ran. He would have. I
Hmm.
mean, that sense he would not have been caught off guard like he was. Like, it
Yeah.
just wouldn't have gone that way. He's smarter than that. I'm telling you,
Mhm.
this man is smarter than that. He's not
Mhm.
stupid. He's not a beginner to the point that all these studies and things that he's done just don't click. I mean, he's
Right,
not
right, right.
mentally retarded. You
Right,
know,
right,
I,
right.
I mean, he not. So this whole thing was somebody out of this group of individuals of this home is going to talk, whether it
Mhm.
be Brian, whether it be
Mhm.
mom, whether it be
Mhm.
dad, whether it be a sister. One of
Mhm.
you are going to open your mouth and you're going to spill something that we can use.
Yeah, because we
And
have the
that's,
guns. We have the guns and the Bearcat. So
that's right.
start talking, and like
And,
most people are just going to shit their pants and just say
and let me
whatever
tell you,
because that's scary.
those flashbangs and the things that they set off when they come in, these flashbangs will knock you off your feet by themselves. I mean, it's like a grenade going off next to you. You can't hear, you can't anything. It rattles you to the point that you're just like, where the hell am I and what the hell's happening? And then all of a sudden you got a knee in your back, cuffs are being slapped on, you're being yanked up in the air. It's a whole other world. I'm telling
That's
you, it's
scary.
not
No,
one that's
that's
enjoyable.
scary. No, and that's
Yes.
scary. Honestly, that's very scary because if you think of yourself, having not done anything wrong and then this happens to you and your family, I just know from experiences where bad things have happened. We've all had bad things happen to us unexpectedly. And how you're like an example, my apartment when I lived in West Philly was broken into, right? And when I walked in, like it probably took me a good 10 minutes to put the pieces together that someone had gone through all my jewelry and stole it. Thankfully it was costume jewelry, but the point is, and they went off with my boombox. But in that 10-minute time frame, I'm going through these scenarios. My brain is trying to come to a conclusion as to what I'm seeing because it was the last thing I thought was happening. And I'm like, maybe I took my boombox to work. No, I would never do that. Why are my jewelry boxes open? That's weird. Maybe my boyfriend was looking, and then all of a sudden it's like boom, you're like, fuck, somebody broke into my house. And so you got to imagine when he's in his home or his parents and this shit happens, your mind is just racing to make sense of this scenario, and you're going to start thinking some wild shit.
I'm telling you, and just think about too. I mean, if you look at his mother and his father, and Truth Seeker up there made a great point. These are two very nice individuals, and the father was a disciplinarian in the fact that he called authorities when Brian stole a cell phone at a very young
Hmm.
age, and he
Hmm.
wanted to teach his son a lesson, and he
Yeah.
wanted to utilize the authorities to be able to do that lesson. Let me tell you, my parents tried that once when I was a kid, and all of a sudden, they called the authorities about me. I think I took some baseball cards or something, and then the next thing you know, I had like 19 cases because the cops found out all this other stuff I had done. So my parents
Mhm.
really learned a lesson on that one. Like,
Right, right,
oh
right,
my
right.
God, what did we do? Like, we didn't mean
Yeah.
to get our son 5 years in the penitentiary.
Mhm. Right.
But I could understand, the father when he is a talkative guy. You could see it in the traffic stop. He's a nice
Mhm.
gentleman that
Mhm.
probably loves conversation, loves to be able to talk with people. So when this
Mhm.
type of situation happens, first you're in shock.
Mhm.
You're trying to dust yourself off, not only from being slammed and whatever pain you're in, but your ears are ringing, whatever's going on. But then he's going to start to ask questions and try to figure out what the hell's going on. And,
Mhm.
you know, they're screaming, your son's a murderer, blah, blah, blah. He's under arrest for this. He's trying to figure out information. It's a
Mhm.
really tough situation. I feel really bad, for the family because they're legitimately very good people. Very, very
Well,
good people.
one of the things that I'm most impressed about, well, a couple things, but one is the fact that the statement that they put out, right? I think was just really thoughtful and for, like all around, like for their son, they believe, that the presumption of an innocence should be held. And then other than that, they've just fallen back. You don't hear boo from them. And I'm sure that there have been reporters and things that have tried to like have them come out and talk and stuff. And and the other thing that strikes me is that none of their friends, right? So I don't know how many friends, but everybody has friends, everybody has relatives, right? But you don't hear a lot coming out. At least I haven't. And that I think is noteworthy, because they're not out here trying to make a spectacle of themselves or causing issues. Like they're genuinely just like keeping themselves composed. And I have a lot of respect for that, I guess is what I want to say.
I definitely I have the utmost respect for them. And yes, somebody in the comments has asked if I've spoken with the Kohbergers. I absolutely have, very early on in this, and also as it moved forward. Um, they do have a good tight knit foundation of how they're handling this, and they're doing it very well. And they're doing it with respect. It's a very difficult situation for them, and I wish I could do more to help, but they're not the type of people that are reaching out trying to get the world to save them or to fund them and do all these different things.
Hmm.
They're taking it step by step, which is the right way to do it. And I think Willie has also made it very clear that they're not wanting people to donate to them and the various
Hmm.
things of that nature. And that shows a lot of class. These are
Hmm.
individuals that have been around the university. The father worked a very hard, working job. This wasn't just like a teacher or,
Hmm.
he was a grunt worker that probably,
Hmm.
didn't make the most substantial of money. And that's why they ran into some financial situations. And I
Like a
think they're
lot a
doing it.
lot of people have. I mean, a lot of people, right? And so when people bring that up, I think in the beginning they were talking about financial strain or whatever, and it's like okay, but like how many Americans have had a similar issue, right? And that doesn't make them bad parents or bad people or anything. And their silence to me speaks volumes. And like it's good to hear that they have a tight knit group that helps them. It brings up an interesting point though for me, which is, and I've said this in previous lives, Karen Reed, the trial that I follow, she has this large movement mainly because of a journalist who's like a Howard Stern type person, but for journalism, has created a movement, Free Karen Reed. And she has these like, big fundraisers and stuff like that. And yet she's being accused of killing a police officer. Now, I believe she's innocent and a lot of other people do, but but they have been able to do this. And I was saying, like, if anybody needs a GoFundMe or whatever it is, it's like Richard Allen or Bryan Kohberger, right? I think I specifically said Richard Allen, but also Bryan Kohberger, because these families are suffering. And the pushback, unfortunately, that you get is that, oh, you're supporting a murderer, and so you get all this hate and death threats and stuff if people try to do that. But the reality is, like, he's still presumed innocent, and there's more victims here, and so there must be a way, to somehow form something like that where you can help people. Not that they're asking for it, but I know there's a lot of people out there that question the mainstream narrative, that believe it's our duty to be skeptical of law enforcement's methods and the state's methods. I think it's our duty to do that. So I don't know what you think about that.
I agree with you. I personally have wanted to get involved, and even though they don't ask or want, I still have always in the back of my mind wanted to do everything I could to help. But with my background and with the decisions that I've made in the previous parts of my life, and I also know, I still get a lot of disrespect and hate, but I've earned that because of my past. I'm very reluctant to get involved in anything financially or anything of that nature. I would fully support others that wanted to make sure that everything was set perfectly, that they received, and there could never be a question of my involvement financially or anything, because I did a video and then I got tons of hate. I'm like, look, I'm going to just take this down. And this is the type of stuff that literally comes out that just is ridiculous to me. I got somebody coming out claiming that, I, for a long time on my channel, was stating that I'm Bryan Kohberger's cousin. I have no relation to Bryan. I am not related. I am not related to Bryan Kohberger in any single way whatsoever. Not blood, not adoption, not anything. I don't even know my full biological family, so there's no way I'm related to Bryan Kohberger.
Yeah.
Have I made a statement that I've been around his family and I do know cousins and I do know some people around him? Yes, absolutely, I have. But I don't come out here and bolster who I talk to, why I talk to him, the relationships I have, because that's private. And that's private for those individuals. It's not. I don't need to make a dollar off of my communication or my discussions with any of these individuals. I don't need to. None of that comes into play whatsoever. I would never share a word that is spoken between us. It's private. It has nothing to do with anything.
Right. And you're like me, because I'm the same way. For me, maintaining someone's privacy is very important to me. And it's not my story to tell, right? So, like, I'm not going to tell somebody else's story. It's not my place to do it. And so I am a keeper of, I don't want to say secrets, but, like, I'm very discreet, and I respect that about you as well. I respect that you let people know that that's happening, but that you're not really going to talk about, divulge any more than that. I'm glad that you let people know that. It was surprising when I heard you say it, and I was like, I think that's cool. I think it's cool, and it's also cool that you're not, talking whatever you're talking about, right? And so I think that's important, and it's a good discussion to have. I appreciate it. So,
well, I think if somebody is willing to sit down and share themselves with you and say something that's so important and so emotionally, from the heart, whether it just even be a discussion about a rock in their front yard that means so much to them, that's not my place to go share that with everybody else, because they entrusted me with that conversation. And if they didn't entrust others to be a part of that conversation, it doesn't need to go any farther. So just like you and I can talk behind the scenes, that's you and I that are talking. I have many members and subscribers that email me that literally want what's spoken between us to stay between us, and they're highly worried about that. They clearly state they don't want their information out, they don't want the discussion out, and I 100% abide by that. I 100% fall in line with that, because guess what?
High five. I love that. I love it.
I put my personal information out for those that are willing to listen to
Mhm,
better people understand me as a person, but also to better myself. If I can
mhm,
tell you all the truth about me, then
mhm,
I'm more comfortable in living within that truth and moving forward as a better person.
mhm.
If I begin to break mold of that, if I sway away from that, then I just fall back into the old way that I used to be. Because guess what? And people need to understand this too. It's a battle every single day. When you are a criminal and you have a criminalistic mind, it
Mhm,
doesn't go away. It's
mhm,
ingrained. It's a part of you. It's
mhm,
easier to lie
mhm.
than it is to stop yourself and force the truth. And
Mhm.
I'm trying to make that transition in life where truth is the first route to go before even thinking about the lie. And
So
that's hard to do because
you're creating new neural pathways in your brain, right? Because your brain's lazy, so it wants to fall back on the old routine because it doesn't take much energy. But to make that conscious choice and say, "Wait, nope, that's not the person I am," and forge a different path, it takes more energy mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all that stuff. So that's very laudable. I mean, I respect that a lot because most people can't do that.
well, it's a battle every single day, and it takes effort, and it takes
Hmm.
counseling, and it takes a
Hmm.
good wife, and it takes
Hmm.
people that are willing to say, "Hey, you effed up. Get your stuff in gear, and let's get back
Hmm.
on track." And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, I get it. I get it. You know,
Hmm.
because when
I
you
can
live
appreciate
so
it.
many years of your life one way, and
Mhm,
it's your way, this is the way
mhm,
you chose to do it. I made the choice to live my life that way. Nobody
mhm,
dictated that life for me. Nobody
mhm.
said this is who you're going to be as a person and the decisions you're going to make. I made every single one of them, and I always made an excuse for why I made that
Yeah,
decision. It was this
mhm.
reason or this or that, which was just another lie on top of the original lie. The
Yeah, no,
excuse was
I
a
feel
lie,
you.
you know.
I feel it. This
So,
is the story of an addict too. I mean, addicts have these stories too, and I have it's not the same, obviously, it's different, but it's a similar path where, like, that mindset, when you're an alcoholic or you're addicted to something else, there's a mindset that comes with that. And to break
right.
from that and really truly like better yourself, it takes, yeah, it's not an
Well, and
easy thing to
I try to get people to focus in on it. You know, you have an addict, whether it be alcohol or drugs, and they got specific programming for you to go do with the steps and everything to
do.
help you. And then you work this program and you do it for years upon years. But at the end of the day, if you ask any addict after 15 years of being sober, could you possibly fall back into that addiction? And all of their answers are an overwhelmingly yes, I could in a
Mhm,
heartbeat if something
mhm.
just transpired to lead me that way. Well, guess what? My criminal activity was my addiction. I loved it.
Okay.
People ask me,
Mhm,
why were you a criminal? Because I loved it. I
mhm,
loved doing
mhm,
it, you know,
mhm,
and I didn't need the money. I committed
mhm,
a terrifying amount of financial crimes to the
mhm,
point that I had the feds chasing me all over the country trying to catch me because I learned the loopholes in banks and checks and credit card
mhm.
checks and all this stuff. So they were literally, like that movie Catch Me If You Can. I
Right,
wasn't
right.
to that level, but I was pretty good at what I did. I knew how to print things. I knew how to make everything, fake everything. And so they
Mhm.
were on to me and I was on the run. I loved
Yeah.
it. It was an addiction. I didn't need the
Mhm,
money, but it was sure fun to go get it and then to go
mhm,
spend it. And then I would give it away to other people who needed it. And then so the addiction was just the criminal activity.
mhm.
And I had to grow to say enough is enough. Like,
Yeah.
God dang, I'm in my 40s now. I don't think I could sleep on a concrete bench in a jail anymore. I just don't think I could
Right.
do this.
Yeah.
So,
The cost
um,
becomes too great, and then also, just as we get older and more wise, we realize that there is things that come back, you know, that come back to us, and that we don't want to have to do that anymore. I mean, I think there's well, at least for me, I'll speak for myself with the addiction, even though I did what I wanted and those kind of things, there was always a level of like, I know this isn't the right way to do this. Like, I know I'm not
Right.
doing the right thing right now. And this is hurting me and everyone that I love around me. And so there's that answering that comes to everyone, I think, at some point. Um,
And I
but
think if we project that, think about projecting that to Bryan Kohberger, and his addiction, I don't think is crime, and a lot of
mhm,
people are trying to even compare him to some of these major serial
I know.
guys out
Yes,
there, and
I know.
it's like, do you understand that was an addiction for them? That was their life. That was
Yeah.
their everything about them lived for that. Do you see that in Bryan Kohberger at
Yeah.
all? Not
No,
at all. I mean, I just don't see it. So
I don't
sorry I
either.
cut you off.
No, that's okay. I'm actually starting to get tired now. After I have like really lively discussions like this, I do start to get like I'm ready for a nap, not because I'm
I hear
bored,
you.
because this was fascinating. And I definitely hope we can do this again. It's just, I
I
know
think we
myself, I'm
definitely
going to
have
start
to.
trailing. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, because I wrote down some more questions and just some other things I wanted to talk about with you. So this was super fun, like really fun.
Well, I definitely enjoyed it. I'd love to do it again. Hopefully, our community also enjoyed it. They would like to have us do it again, hopefully, one day soon, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, chat. I'm normally like pretty interactive with my chat and I haven't really talked to them. But when I have a guest on, it's hard for me to focus on both. And this would have been like 20 hours. So, um, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining me and Mr. A.R. Hayes, of Convict's Thoughts. And yeah, we definitely got to plan and do this again. So.
Most definitely. I definitely appreciate you having me on. I love the community, and you're a blast. I think we could definitely go on for hours and hours next time.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We'll do this again. All right, guys.
Sounds
Well, I'm
good.
going to put my outro on here just whoops. Let's see. This is this one. I love this one.
Maybe.
Yeah, I
Maybe.
know, right? Listen, I'm a professional over here. Let me see. All right, here we go.
I'ma do shit my way, so you can go kick